I'm Kevin Jervich. Welcome to Founder Uncovered, the show about those brave enough to dream big and bold enough to swim away from the safety of the shore. Here, we dive into the origin moments before the noise, before the spotlight, back when it was just a vision, a hunch, and a founder crazy enough to chase it. For all the dreamers listening, this is where your story begins. Perkins Coie is a leading international law firm known for providing high-value strategic solutions. The emerging companies and venture capital team counsels startups and the investors who back them, supporting clients from formation to exit. In the past 3 years, clients have raised more than $23 billion, with a B, in private markets between pre-seed and growth stages. Perkins Coie combines tailored counsel with sector experience. So when it's time to accelerate, whether for the next financing round, a strategic deal, or even going public, your team is ready. To learn more, visit perkinscoie.com. Where are you staying now? Where do you live?
I'm San Francisco. Yeah, so over here, like just north of Golden Gate Park, not too far from the ocean. So we kind of in the city, but close enough to nature to kind of get a balance in life.
Golden Gate Park, yeah, that's one of my, the Presidio, that whole area, Golden Gate Park. That's a completely different side of San Francisco for anyone that doesn't know. I lived in San Francisco for 4 years.
Oh, yeah.
But I was on the other side of the city by the Giant Stadium. We call it South Beach, Soma. But where you live is kind of more the real San Francisco.
I think there's SF obviously has its reputation, and it's a very like broad range of opinions. And I do think a lot of it, I guess like any city that you live in for a while, it has so much dependency on like what neighborhood, what your experience. I've always thought about this when I first started traveling, and you go to like a well-known international city, but you might just see the touristy neighborhoods, and you'd like think of SF. South Beach, I think, by the way, is totally legit, but you look at like Fisherman's Wharf and these spots where like it doesn't really have the part of the city that any of us really like.
I don't think any locals go to Fisherman's Wharf on the regular, unless their parents come into town or their friends.
But this is my point, right? Like if you're 20 and you're backpacking through Europe and you go to Paris or you go to London, you're going to go to like Trafalgar Square, you're going to go to the Eiffel Tower, and that's their Fisherman's Wharf. And when we're there at that age, especially, we're not like, oh man, this is kind of, I mean, we may say it's kind of cheesy and touristy, but we're still like, oh, this is Paris. When in reality, I think a lot of people visiting SF, that's on the extreme side of the tourists. And then I think there's like the tech side of like South of Market and FiDi. It gets that reputation of like, this is San Francisco. And I think totally aligned with you. I think it's a combination of all those things. And I think the avenues, the outer Richmond, outer Sunset, there's a lot of local flavor out here, and it feels really nice.
What's it like? We all hear about this. For anyone that's not in Silicon Valley, what's it like being a founder in the heart of SF?
Yeah, it's kind of what you can definitely get the full experience. You know, like that I think caricature of the founder, especially now, but this is always whatever the current trend is. Now it's AI. You could go to 14 meetups, twice a day, and probably have the most absurd like robot checking you in, and it's just like the insane experiences 5 times a day, 2 times a day. Or it could be pretty similar to, I think, other major cities. I honestly feel like that's more my experience. Part of that is being here 23 years. And so, we have a nice little office off the Panhandle. I can get downtown for meetings if I need to, but I kind of like being next to some greenery, and people will come over for a coffee once in a while too. And, we got a 6-month-old kid and a house in the avenues, and that feels like a pretty normal life. And then you plug in and you're, like any other founder and grinding beyond belief. But yeah, so I do love that side of it, right? You can go down into the city, if you will, and you can get into as much as you want to, and then 15 minutes away you can escape. And because I think that's obviously really important for the balance of it all. Like if you're in, I don't know that I could be as effective right now if I was living in like, a place in South Beach or South of Market, because it's like it doesn't turn off. I think that's the critique of New York a lot of the time, right? You're in finance and you're downtown. You just like don't turn off, so you navigate it. In SF, it gives you the ability, if you can figure it out, obviously, to tap in and tap out. So yeah, I think it's an amazing experience if you can find that balance. And if you can't, I think it can be really difficult, and you see a lot of people burning out.
This is such a good point. I think back on when I first moved to San Francisco to start my first company. Every Wednesday morning, I would actually drive to Golden Gate Park, like super early in the morning, and Kezar Stadium, that little track right there.
Yeah.
And I would do like a little track workout and run. But then I would just get lost for like an hour in Golden Gate Park. Because Golden Gate Park, for those who've never been there, is huge. Like for a city park, you actually completely forget that you're even in a city. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but living where I was living, it was just chaos all the time, which that's what I was doing at work, right? Like as an early stage founder, it's chaotic and you're in Slack messages and emails and calls and shit's not working for you. And then when you try to go to sleep, it's loud. And like that switch never turned off. I've since moved to Santa Cruz literally for this exact reason of I want to have a little yin to my yang. If my life is chaotic at work, and it's a healthy chaotic at this point,
Yeah.
I want to be able to get away. I want to be able to be by nature. And I think this is so key because, like you're saying, like work these days, especially as a founder, is not 9 to 5. There's no founders that I know that strictly work 9 to 5. I read Bob Iger's book, and he says he turns it off, but he gets up super early. I don't know how they're able to do it. How do you juggle like the demands of you running a company, being a dad, being kind of at the epicenter? How are you juggling all of those things and just making sure that you're still bringing your best self to work every day?
Yeah, I mean, it's the ultimate question. I feel like I was absolutely, even before our wonderful son, like I was horrible at it for the first many years of it, right? And I think so much of what I do now that I can speak to, like everything else, right, came from the mistakes made. And what I notice now, and I really try to prioritize, is knowing myself, knowing my body. Obviously, everything down to nutrition stuff I do think has an effect. And right now, for example, I'm not like in a great place there, but I know that if I pay attention to that a little bit more, my brain will work a little bit better. But the things that are most controllable, because even nutrition, people could argue, but it's not totally controllable. You might have a grind week and you're doing fast food no matter what. But what I really do try to control that I feel like is most controllable is the time you allocate to make the most important decisions. And so what that might look like is really front loading. I know my brain and my body is most on point the minute I have coffee in the morning, till like noon. And I can still get things done till 3. And then after 3, I will still work, but like I'm probably like a 5th grader at that point. Like I really am. And I usually don't catch myself, but I should. I should just like record myself because I know in the meetings I have at like 5 p.m., like half the things I'm saying are probably wrong. Half of them are probably like not even close to where they should be in the thoughtfulness they require. And so, yeah, I really try to front load, whether it's calls with partners or clients or really important, infrastructure-based team meetings, like get that spot where your brain and your neurons are like just pumping for that block of time. And yeah, like I think a lot of people have argued this point for a long time. There are still things you can do where you don't need that level of function, emails, et cetera, et cetera. But I think that's been, if there was one thing that has made the biggest difference, and the oversimplified way of putting that, right, is like working smart versus working hard. And it's just like, think about knowing yourself more, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, like all the delegation, everything plays into this. And so I think those of us can be perfectionists in this role. And as you go through it, you learn how to like, that's okay. Maybe it's good that I'm a perfectionist for certain parts of like partnership conversations or creative activation, some of the important components of what Hi-Fi Labs does, but know and empower and collaborate with the teammates who can, be the right combinations of that. When I know that my ideas happening from 8 a.m. to 12 noon are going to be way more effective than noon to 4, but maybe that can be handed off to someone else. And I think just, echoing that earlier point you had about getting outside, I learned that too. Like I think everyone said this for a long time. What was the quote? Like Albert Einstein, this is extreme, but they said he used to this is probably BS. I bet this is one of those things that just like floated through time and is not true, but I believe it, or I want to believe it, where he would hold a stone in his hand above a bucket of water. And when he would fall asleep, he would drop the stone and it would wake him up. And he had his best ideas when it was like half awake in that mid subconscious. And by the way, that's not what I do at all, but I just think those things you find out about yourself, I do get my best ideas when I'm taking a shower or when I'm walking. Like if I had to do this, maybe someone builds an app where there's a better microphone with sound, because I'd be like walking through the park ideally, and I bet I'd be a better interview just because when I'm moving forward, there's something about the like momentum, you know what I mean? But this will hopefully still be a great interview, don't get me wrong. But you find those things that work for you, and then you're like, okay, if I know that I get these great ideas when I'm in the park and I'm walking around and it's sunny outside, and I know I get these great ideas in the shower, and I know I'm best on calls between 8 to 12, you just try to I use the word optimize way too much. I think it's so fucking lame, kind of, you know what I mean? Like tech, optimize everything. And then I have strong opinions of like optimization with AI. That's like a beast in its own right. Like, I don't think that's the right way for us to evolve as humanity, is to be optimized. I think it's like more experience and moments and sharing things. But for what we know of our bodies and getting things done, that word I think makes some sense. So
there's this old saying in finance. I was a wealth manager. I don't know if you knew this, a long time ago. Yeah. I used to wear a suit every day, work at the bank. But one of the like early things you learn is paying yourself first, right? It's like if you read any finance book, it's like Finance 101, pay yourself first. It's the same thing with what you're talking about, is like you got to make time. If your best ideas come from being in the shower or going for a walk, yes, you're going to make time to take a shower, obviously, but like during your day, schedule an hour block, maybe. And it's maybe right at that window when you're kind of like coming down that crash at like 1 o'clock after lunch, where, hey, I'm just going to go for a walk. And maybe that idea is not executed on that day. Maybe that's an idea that we bring up with the team tomorrow or the following day. A lot of the stuff you're mentioning, I'm like literally shaking my head if you're not watching this interview, if you're listening to it, because it's spot on. So true. After 3 p.m., I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to talk to actually anybody, like not even my friends. I just want to get my own sort of busy work done. But when I wake up in the morning, I want to talk to everybody. I want to get things done. I want to have a to-do list. I want to knock out the most important things of that day. And whatever I don't get done, I don't try to just cram it in at 5 p.m.
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it well. That gets transferred into the next day's to-do list.
Yep.
Per se, but take me back. So Joe is a family man, is living in San Francisco. What was like young Joe like? Were you like starting companies at 3 years old? Were you in sports? What were you doing?
Yeah, definitely wasn't starting company. Maybe thinking about it, kind of. I remember in middle school, just certainly not 3, but we had I don't know if this is a California school thing, but you did a thing where, and I always crack up about this, the school would have the students like sell magazines, you know what I mean? And this is what's so kind of, I hope it was for nonprofit, but I don't think it was. I think it was like a for-profit business. It's like, let's get free work from all these middle school kids. And I remember the things. Labor. Yeah, you remember the things we would get are like, they were called Weeples. They were these little like fluffy like stickers, like creatures. So anyway, that's a bit of a tangent, but I definitely dug into stuff like that. So there was some maybe noticeable, entrepreneur vibes early on. But yeah, I think the earliest one, music, obviously what Hi-Fi Labs is really foundationed around is music and technology. And music, from my earliest memories, I remember like my parents playing Dylan records and John Prine and Cat Stevens and a lot of folk music, Kingston Trio in the living room. And I think you remember those like earliest memories being the warmest memories. So there's a fire going and there's music, and there's like that music is bringing joy to everyone. It's bringing joy to the room, and it's like relaxing. And that never left me like my whole life. Honestly, the more I got into different things and study different subjects through school, or my early jobs were also in radio, which was like in music, but also adjacent to music. Some of it was like sports broadcasting, and all of it kind of kept pointing me back to the only thing that really makes sense to me, basically because it doesn't make sense, it doesn't have to make sense, is music and basically art. And the idea that, I feel like society, certainly back then, probably very much still now, is based on like, the definition of of like math or science and what you can quantify. And it was always like music, you can't really quantify. It's so subjective that makes so much sense, because I always would like spin out on like, but like even math is something we created, right? So it makes sense because we say it makes sense, but you know, not to get quirky. But yeah, so music was everything, and I mean, my mom was an art teacher, and you know, it would always be like a part-time gig, and that was something that was always in my mind. Where I'm like, we don't have an art teacher at my school, and she's the art teacher of another school, and why don't, like, she teaches this thing? Why don't we have this taught where I go to school? And also, why is she not full-time when like the science and math? And by the way, I love science and math. Don't get me wrong, but it never felt equal. And so this thing that I was most passionate about always felt like it was lesser. And also maybe naturally and with the ego, like that was the thing I felt most comfortable with. Like, I think flow state, and when you can like easily get into flow state, it's a good representation of the things you're either wired for, or that you love the most, or that drives you the most. And momentum and inertia is what keeps us going. And my flow state early on, this is obviously getting older, like grammar school, elementary school, middle school, even high school, was like playing music or listening to music, or you know working on something that maybe is musical, or just creating something, I guess, building something. I had a radio show and building out a playlist and stuff like that. So I think that has been, to this day, the biggest driver for like my life, and why I'm really, you know, it's a grind in this role, but really happy and feel lucky to be in this role where, you know, every day we talk to artists and we're trying to help them, you know, create in a way that connects with their fans more effectively. So yeah, that was a long-winded way of saying little Joe, I think, always kind of like got bit by that bug really early on, and it took a few different forms, but it was always like music was kind of everything, and it still is. We were like Beta Breakers, you probably saw happen this weekend, and we were, you know, in years past we might be, I never ran it, but like wandering along and you know, doing whatnot. And this year we're out there at like 8 a.m. with our kid, just like, I'm like, wow, this is a different experience. But what I thought was so interesting is that a lot of people didn't have headphones, which I'm like, that's crazy. You're running like 7 miles without any music, but whatever, to each their own. But then when people would walk by with like a boombox or a Bluetooth, immediately it's like, oh, that's a vibe. And you're watching the person run, and you're looking up at the leaves and the sun is coming through. You're like, all right, this is like, I think this is living. So that's absolutely the through line that I think hit me really early and never left. And kind of anytime I worked for a ticketing company, which is still music, but very more corporate years ago. And anytime I swayed away from tapping close to the creation, I felt a little bit lost. And so, you know, have to be lucky to stay in this and keep hustling, and hopefully we'll pull it off on a really high level. But I think the music is like the driver and the art for my whole life.
There's always a peace and a confidence when I talk to somebody who I would classify as is living their purpose per se. And in the few conversations that we've had, like, I feel like you're exemplifying that, which is easier said than done in life, because we have a lot of pressures to make money or be successful or provide for a family or follow what our parents want for us. You know, I'm 39 years old. I feel like I finally found my purpose. And there's nothing better than waking up every day and literally chasing something that maybe you wouldn't do for free, but you would do for less than you're getting paid for.
Yeah.
And that always translates into the product because you care more. Like, teams that genuinely and founders that genuinely care about their space, truthfully, not just from the business case, you can see it. You can see it in the user experience. You can see it when you talk to them. I see that with you, which is awesome. Share a little bit about like what Hi-Fi Labs is, maybe some of the artists you're working with, and maybe prior to answering those, what was the moment along that journey when you said, you know what, I'm doing these other jobs. It's not for me. I have this idea or this vision. Maybe you don't even have the company name yet.
Yeah.
Like, what was that moment?
There was literally a specific moment that I think is interesting. So, you know, I started in, I kind of touched on this a second ago, but I had a high school radio show, and that was, outside of just growing up, being around music, loving it, that was the first like, oh, I'm obviously not getting paid for a high school radio show, but I can see this is sort of a profession. And then I was getting paid working at a local radio station my sophomore year, like running the board feed for the SF Giants in Mendocino, this little tiny town. And then went to junior college, transferred to SF State, and studied broadcasting, all kind of inspired by that. And that got me into the radio industry. And I was working in radio for like 8 years, kind of worked my way up, was an intern, and just, had that kind of classic story of just, what do you need? Let me help. Slowly but surely pick up more things, just walk into offices and be like, hey, program director, this guy, Larry Sharp, who's amazing, kind of took me under his wing and learned how to get on the air and learned how to program, and was the music director after a while. But it was still never, it was weird. Like before I had that job, I saw another music director across the hall, and I was like, that's my dream. Like I want to be the music director of a major market radio station. And I got it. And it was like one of those moments in life where a month in, I was like, I'm like, I was doing a pre-recorded session. I was just like, don't get me wrong. Like I like Rolling Stones and Led Zeppelin and the bands were playing, but I don't know if this is it didn't hit. And it was the combination of like in life, right? I use the term sweet spot a lot, which is so cheesy, but I feel like sweet spot is everything. You hit that, whether it's your partner or whatnot, like your friends, the things you do, the things you grow to love. Where's that sweet spot? And so it wasn't there. And then at the same time, the combination of that and having this little scratch, this itch, this whisper was always there too. And that was more tied to creating things. I felt like what I really enjoyed, and also what I was good at, was kind of creative ideas and building things, whether that was like doing music or working with musicians more actively and more hands-on. And so long story short, or long story maybe longer, as the radio position, I had a local music show and I kept getting demos, and I ended up managing a band called the Stone Foxes. Fantastic band. Go check them out. So I did that for 8 years, and half of that was while still working in radio. But the same thing kind of happened. Like that was definitely something I loved and I enjoyed doing the entire time. And I, to this day, I look back and like, being on the road, on the journey, like knowing these guys in the studio writing this music and then seeing them perform it at the Fillmore or something is like goosebumps everywhere, like so fulfilling. I'll never forget so many of the moments from that part of my career. But there was still a little bit of an itch of something. And where that kind of showed itself, I would say, is I was actually on a panel at SF Music Tech, which is this event that Brian Zisk used to do at the Hotel Kabuki typically. It was a really cool event. He might even bring it back. I don't know. But so I was on a panel with Tim Westergren from Pandora, and I was in radio and I was managing bands, and I started managing bands because I didn't say this part, like I kept playing these really great local bands from these demos. And at that time, music was only sent to like the local newspaper, the local DJ, or someone's friend. There was no internet really, like MySpace. This is pre-MySpace. So we'd get these musicians and I was like, oh man, we're going to break them. Like we're going to break them on the radio. And some of them we got on the radio and they started getting, like, I knew our listenership was hundreds of thousands of people. Like, oh, this is going to be a big moment and they're going to be on their way. And a lot of them started breaking up. And so that was the impotence to kind of like, what's going on here? Like, I always just wanted to try to figure out what are the issues. I did always, I think, have that kind of like drive to why is this not working? And so I started managing this band, and then I managed the band for a while, and then I'm on this panel, and similar situation where, Tim's talking about like this, like not on demand streaming, but this idea where you could be anywhere in the United States and you just like listen to whatever song you want and it's in the cloud. It's like and I'm over here programming a radio station, and I always want to be cautious not to talk too much shit, if we can swear. I don't know if we can swear, and talk too much smack. And like our radio station, and I'm just going to say it, but like was bought out by a massive corporation. So when I first started, it was Susquehanna. It was like a family-owned company in Pennsylvania. It got bought out by Cumulus Media Partners, these guys, the Dickey brothers. And they were also the people known for like pulling the Dixie Chicks off the radio because they said something bad about President Bush. And that like really rubbed me the wrong way. And I was like, wow, I'm working for these people. And then they bought the San Francisco market. And even though I was the music director and eventually program director, they're still telling us what we can play, right? And there's just like, what's the reason that we even have local radio if someone in Atlanta who doesn't know anything about what the Bay Bridge is, what the Golden Gate Bridge is, like is telling us why they should listen to music? It's just based on global national popularity and doesn't make sense. So I'm on this panel and I'm feeling all these like, pain points from my current role, and we've been basically acquired by a much larger company, and it's really diluting the brand of like the golden age of radio, or what was years before, but still tailing off in. And I'm just like, man, what technology could actually, like, when used well, technology can really unlock this experience of more music for more people and a more personalized music experience, and a more, like, at the end of the day for me, and I think what we try to do now at Hi-Fi Labs is just create moments. It's so simple. It's like, just like, music helps. It's the soundtrack of our lives. Make sure people who are really great at it and passionate about it, and they're creating great music, can be heard by the people who want to hear it. And at that panel, at that moment, I'm like, man, this feels like a better place for me to spend my time than this terrestrial radio station where we've been kind of told what to play. And so coming out of that, I was like, having some wine with some friends, and in the back of my mind the whole time, like, I feel like there's a lot that could be fixed. Like, Pandora is awesome. I don't know if that's the answer. This is all pre-Spotify too. And so basically, the moment to finally answer your question was, I remember in my mind, a day after that panel, I was like, I need to spend a little bit of time. I really don't know what I'm talking about yet. I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to try to work and understand as many perspectives of this industry as possible, so that then, not to reference the vinyl that was playing in my living room growing up, but like Bob Dylan, know your song well before you start singing. I was just like, I believe in like mastership and like really understanding the space from all the angles. And let me try to do that, but I can't do that today. So I basically said, I want to take maybe up to 5 years. In my mind, it was not more than 5 years. It could have been more than 5 years. It ended up not being more than 5 years, but and I just want to work in different parts of the music industry and music and technology. And I did. And I worked at, I kept managing the band for a while, which was amazing. I started like a music tech agency and worked with some much larger companies. I worked at Game Time, a ticketing company. I worked at a mobile app and a karaoke app called Star Maker. And then all that led me to Patreon. And that was another moment, just like the radio station days, right? Where I'm like, oh, this is the dream job. Like this is the future where like artists can connect directly to their fans, and more music can be heard, and the soundtrack of our lives can be, more amplified and really beautiful. And the people creating that, back to a lot of my motivation, can actually make a living, right? Like the art teachers aren't getting cut or being paid half. And so, yeah, this is like, hopefully that creates the segue to the other part of your question, but basically that was my dream job. I got it. And very similar to radio, without getting too in the weeds here, about 6 months in, for various reasons, it wasn't right. It still wasn't there. I thought the 5 years led to that, and typical founder journey, right? Like, it didn't. It was like, all right, it's close, and it's tapping into one part of it. And I don't want to badmouth Patreon at all. And I actually think what Patreon's done for the creator economy and Jack and the team is like, it's like, I don't want to use any word lightly here, but like so evolutionary, right? Like, just so powerful, so important, will always be really important, and it's still incredibly relevant. But one of the components that I struggled with there was that it was very much a platform. And especially now, we can get into this later on in the interview, but like, I think the future is going into a much more custom, personalized way. And I felt that back then. And I felt like the artists I was talking to, the managers I knew and I was talking to, they didn't really all want to say, fans, come here on my Patreon and connect. They want it to be more unique. Maybe it's not always connecting online, it's connecting other places, but there's connective tissue that can create this like personalized digital brand. And so we've calibrated that, like I've calibrated with the team and our amazing team and Pierre and Mike and whatnot, that mission to what Hi-Fi is now. But that was sort of, while still at Patreon, similar to being in radio, it's like, it's not quite there. And there's still this like scratch that I'm feeling at least once a day, more likely subconsciously like 50 times a day. And my wife would probably tell you, though I don't know all the things I said in my sleep, but like it was, oftentimes like, dude, like, God, take some more magnesium before I go to bed or something. But yeah, it was always there. And then it's funny, and this kind of speaks to what you were talking about earlier, but like, since starting Hi-Fi, it's such an I hate founders are talking about grind, but like, it is. It's an absolute grind. but there's something about it that's like, but this does, like, I don't have the itch anymore, right? And like in life, it's nice to not itch. Like it's nice to be able to scratch an itch and have that be gone. And granted, there's all sorts of other pain that isn't an itch, but there's something about an itch, I think, if you have, something you really feel passionate about or a vision or whatnot, that yeah, like I would say it's worth maybe, and this isn't the case always, and like you have to be really, I think, lucky. It's not necessarily even a skill thing, lucky to have the opportunity to do what we do, but to be able to scratch an itch is like a real gift. And I feel like I'm able to do that at Hi-Fi, and it's been really hard, but yeah, like trading off other painful things to do that and feeling like we really are working towards something that is solving that problem that I think I've felt since I was like 5 years old.
I mean, I don't know if you were intentionally doing this, but like what an intentional journey, like to decide I'm different than you. Like that moment that I would have thought years ago when I was sitting in radio, like, oh, or on that panel, I would have just tried to go start something and probably would have failed for like 7 years for sure and pivoted millions of times. Kudos for you for just saying, hey, I want to be an expert. I want to learn all different areas of the music industry, even though you had already been in the music industry, it sounded like, for like a decade. Is that right?
Yeah, but to that point, right? Like I think that's the other weird spin of this thing is that I don't know that that's the right way. You know what I mean? Like you could argue I could have learned way more. And frankly, I could have maybe learned it in a year instead of 5 years or 4 years, which is what it was, if I just like started my own thing. And I think that's a really good point. Like, I think that worked in some ways for me and did. It like helped me gain the perspective so that when we started Hi-Fi, more than anything, I could speak the language of the different stakeholders and really understand the experience. And I think that is incredibly important. But I also think the one thing I love about like starting a company is I've never learned more in a job than like, because you kind of see everything, for the most part, maybe.
Yeah. No matter how well your domain expertise is in a field, or if you're a complete generalist and you have no idea about it, which tons of successful companies have been launched this way.
Yep.
Brian Chesky, Airbnb, he wasn't in hospitality. Travis Kalanick wasn't in transportation when he launched Uber. There's like thousands of these stories.
Yeah.
But no matter what, whether you're on the left side or the right side there's no actual playbook in starting a company. Every company is like a unique set of experiments. And you're trying to prove that, hey, this can be a viable business. There's so many elements that are new. It's almost like chess. Like after the 20th move in a game of chess, that game of chess where all the pieces are has never been met in millions and millions and millions of games, not just that you've played, that anyone's played.
Totally.
There's so much alike and aligned this way. So yeah, there's really no, whether you want to learn for 10 years about something or you're just like, yo, I'm just going to start this tomorrow.
Yeah.
You're going to learn a ton. There's no playbook for it. Eventually, I think the key is you have to go. You have to leave the safety of the shore. You got to start swimming. And maybe the most important thing that I always say is you can't look back, right? So even when it gets grimy and cloudy and cold and you don't know where you're going, you got to just keep swimming, right?
Yeah, definitely. And could not agree more. And I think that's would be the moral of that is like either if you're like, I think people do get stuck in the analysis paralysis, right? Where they'll sit there and they might ask that question, like, should I take a job and try some things or should I just start this thing? And then they end up not really doing either and something falls. And I think that's the key is like, I do think momentum is everything and not looking back. And there's always, man, this was like probably like a meme years ago, but there's the cheesy one of the guy he's like mining underground, you know what I mean? And
I love
diamonds.
That. Oh,
yeah.
No, that's
and there's one of them like turning around like right before he gets it. And I think
all he needed to do was one more hit with this.
Yeah, man. You never know when it's going to happen. And that's the thing. And I felt like I saw this starting managing bands really early on because you can absolutely everything. No matter what you do, you can see this. But like, it is super rare, right? Like to be successful, period, is pretty rare. Like to get a job, especially now, is like it's not like guaranteed in like a field you want to do, especially. But the minute you spend 2 days doing it versus 1 day, you've literally like doubled your probability of pulling it off. Like even if it's like looking for jobs for 2 days. And the more extreme is like as a musician, right? Which is the thing we were most like ingrained in back in the day, It was, if you just keep putting out music and keep going, not only are you're increasing your chances every step forward you take, you're also learning. And you don't even, the combination of those things is everything. And I mean, that's like, I think literally how we create experience. And so that's what gets really exciting. And again, there's no guarantees, and there is so much failure, and there is so much failure to an actual end. Like, people do pivot and stop, and that's totally fine. And we're lucky enough to be going right now, and I'm really excited for the future of both our companies. And like, what you guys are building is amazing. I'm super proud of what Hi-Fi is. But what it seems is so consistent is just like, the longer you go, the better your chance is going to be, as long as, you're creating systems, and I don't know, like the mind map that a leadership team will have, and the learnings of like taking into account those failures. You just, sometimes the way you learn how to do that, I feel like you can get exponentially stronger.
Yeah.
And like, I understand how to look at fear, and then look at failure, and then, try to use it for a strength in the future. And there's, I mean, have you seen that Simon Sinek one? He can be kind of hit or miss. He's smart, but he was talking about the top 5 tennis players. Have you seen this? There's like a clip he has where he talks about, they did a big analysis, and I don't know who they were in this, I'm forgetting, but I feel like it was a university, and they studied like the skill sets of the top tennis players in the world, and the difference between the top 5, which in tennis is a great example. It's a single person sport for the most part. And you have like the champions stay champions for the most part, like the big 4 recent years, right? And so the point he was making was that the difference is that the ones at the top, the Djokovic, the Federer, they are really good at just forgetting about the last point that they lost and moving forward. And I totally believe that. But the core of that point I effing love, where it's just like, I like any sport you play, or any like meeting you get on, and the ability to like learn from it, but also like not overanalyze it. And that doesn't mean to not like take it in, internalize it even if you need to, and work through it. And the shitty hands were all dealt. It doesn't mean to downplay that at all. But it's like, can you find a way to process that in a way that doesn't let you forget about the reason you're here doing this, because you love it so much and it means so much to you, and that cannot always stay as something that overpowers the incredibly understandable human experience of like feeling like crap sometimes and being really affected badly.
I love Simon Sinek because he is also a self-proclaimed optimist.
Yeah.
In everything that he writes, I try, like, whenever I write my goals, like for the week, for the year, the last goal that I always write is to be the most optimistic person that I know. Because I really try to carry that, because as a leader or a founder, things go wrong all the time. It's not even that they're supposed to go right all the time. A lot of things are actually not supposed to work or go wrong, or feature flops. Like, this is just a reality. And it's really your mindset that the team is going to adopt. And if you're looking at all of these issues or failures as failures or actual issues or problems, rather than, hey, okay, we learned this, what are we going to do about it? How are we going to make it better? Right?
So true.
So that's great. What are you most excited? So you've been in the music industry so long. What you're working on is fascinating. You're passionate about it. What are you most excited about? What Hi-Fi Labs is bringing to market, is doing for artists? Can you speak on that a little bit? I'm interested to know. I know other people are too.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I'm most excited about, what we're building towards right now, and what we're actively doing with a handful of clients, is we're kind of like, this is almost watering it down, but I think it's the best way to describe it initially. We're like rebuilding the plumbing of the music industry in a way that's not like anti-label necessarily, but it is very, very pro-artist. And I think, and very pro-artist over platform. And it's not anti-platform even, in the sense of, like, there's a current need for, I feel like, every part of music entertainment. So, whether it's TikTok, whether it's Instagram, whether it's YouTube and the discoverability, the DSPs, Spotify, etc., those are places that human beings enjoy listening to music. They're most comfortable in those places listening to music. And I think an artist has every right to be super annoyed by, like, I have to play this game. But it doesn't change the fact that that's where things are found, if you oversimplify it. Like, it's 15-second vertical content, and it's the most popular place to find things. But at the same time, I do feel Hi-Fi, we feel there's a better way than just having an artist be like, all right, this is what everyone does. This is where people find music and discover music. So you have to do this too. And honestly, now more than ever, we're incredibly excited, and what we're seeing firsthand with certain clients at the ability for the artist and their teams to take some extra time in the same way anyone would start a business and think about, what are the things I actually do love? Like, what are the things that give me oxygen in addition to writing, recording music, and playing it live for music? And is there a way that that can translate into the pathways of how things are discovered in this medium? And so we kind of, what I'm most excited about, to back to your question, is like, we're kind of able with a lot of our clients to calibrate how they think about expressing themselves. And then others who are massive artists, we don't tell like they got it figured out. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not telling some of our big clients who are selling out stadiums to do anything differently, but even they are dealing at times with the plumbing that is out of date. And so those are the two things that I'm really proud of us doing, that I think when you combine them, because we take a step back for what Hi-Fi does, we think of ourselves as a flywheel. We do activations, which are like the creative approaches to how you can express your art. We do optimization, which is like the plumbing of, usually tied to data capture and making sure that like not maybe just the label of the promoter, but the label, promoter, and the artist actually can have control over the data they're capturing, because that's what the fans are kind of looking at and probably sharing it with. And then we can do monetization. So if those two other things are figured out, typically, certainly the optimization piece, there are new ways in which, as the future progresses, artists can, transact with their fans, whether that's different ways to sell things and make money, or different ways to stay connected and inspire them. We feel all of that is at a place that could be so much stronger. And that's what Hi-Fi is doing actively. And so for a lot of artists, we'll, with our creative team, come up with like a different way to think about how to share their new single, their new album, talk about their new tour. It is all really high touch. It is really custom. But then as we're doing that, we'll make sure that all the success that comes from, like a Dua Lipa live stream in Times Square, a Rufus Du Sol North American tour announce, like there is a health that is, very artist first, that still gives the label everything it needs, that still supports what the promoters are trying to do, and kind of honors the fans too. Like, we're trying to get to a place, and we're there in some modules, tools we've built, but not in all, where also the fans have the right to say, like, I want this person to have my data and maybe not this person. So like, everything about that infrastructure, in my experience, and I do think I'm versed in it. I don't think I'm the world's foremost expert in it, but we also work with people who are like, we work with legal people and data scientists who know more about certain things than the Hi-Fi team does. And from that, we really are trying to approach it like, we don't just want to build too fast, which is kind of sometimes against the, startup ethos. And frankly, we've been around, as you know, I think, Kevin, like 6 years. And I won't say that's fully intentional, don't get me wrong, but I am really proud that, like any startup, there's so many times along that journey we could have probably compromised that mission. And frankly, like, some of our investors probably wanted us to, and others, and this is like credit to, I think, a lot of our supporters, frankly, is that they've trusted the process, and they've trusted, like, okay, we understand that the mission's really important to this founding team, and that we trust that if this is fixed, it will be a much healthier future for everyone, and, financially stable for our business, but also a much better universe for music exploration, discovery, engagement for fans and artists, and all the other middle people. Again, we're not like anti any of these players. So yeah, that's a little vague maybe, but kind of trying to be somewhat specific in that, if I had to oversimplify it one more time, it's like, I think the music industry has built these types of houses, and the plumbing is an effing mess, and it's no one's fault. Like, I don't think, yes, there are maybe some manipulative or malicious actors at certain larger companies. Don't get me wrong, I can't fully speak to that. I wouldn't even actually want to say that unless I knew them personally, and I don't. But like, from outside looking in, from some, even recent court documents, there's some weird stuff for sure. That's always a part of stuff, and I don't think that's good. But it's also just because as things evolve, and this in tech, there's tech debt everywhere, and there's debt everywhere, and things like just get, you have someone new at a business and they're in charge of one thing, and they, typically a version of a Band-Aid is more common than a version of rebuilding, if it's the code or the data plumbing or whatever it is. And now it's really hard to do that, but that is what we're trying to do. And it's what we're doing kind of, I don't want to say slowly but surely. I think it's a decent pace, but I do think we're doing it effectively with a lot of well-known artists and some emerging artists. And we're just kind of like that house that typically you go into and you may not know that, the pipes are like, the old pipes, and you may just be like, I'm still getting water out of these things. So like, this is fine, but that water is funky water. And so we're like, let's fix it. Make sure maybe you own that water or you can control the water. This is a horrible analogy, by the way.
You're being humble. I love it. I want to shed some light on who are some of these like well-known artists that you guys work with.
So like we do, like I mentioned that flywheel. So we do different things for different clients. So like Linkin Park is a large partner of us who we're very lucky to work alongside. And we help them relaunch their fan club. And so a lot of the things I'm speaking to, right, exist behind the scenes of what that is able to do. On the fan side, it is a really awesome fan club. And to their credit, they've had that 20 years. And I'll always say, especially with that client, well, frankly, all of our clients, they deserve all the credit. And we need to be humble because like we're helping them fix the plumbing. They're building the house. They're the ones who people want to go into the house. You know what I mean? Like we're not getting people in the house. We're getting people to help see where the house is and look for the house. And that's cool. But yeah, Linkin Park.
Linkin Park is one of the greatest artists of the 2000s. Like,
hey man, I'm not going to argue that. I'm not going to argue that. Yeah, they're phenomenal. And like, huge credit, like the journey they took. And I mean, I was a massive Chester fan and everyone went through so much in that and it's a massive loss. And then the band to kind of go back to the origin, like from zero, was speaking to sort of like iterations of the band in the very earliest days. And Emily coming over from band Dead Sarah. And they've really like, I think, built a new chapter in a powerful way. But yeah, like Bruno Mars we work with, Rufus Du Sol we work with, Snoop Dogg, Death Row Records. And then we're doing more and more work. Like there's artists we work with that we are under NDA. We can't describe. There's also more emerging artists we're trying to work with. It's been an interesting journey in that in the early days we were doing more with emerging artists and it was hard, I think, for us to maybe our value to be seen, which I totally understand because as an emerging artist, you're just trying to find fans, rightfully so. Like that's your oxygen. But we'd be like, but when you're finding fans, make sure there's a cleanliness to the data and the connection. And it's sometimes way easier for us to work with like stadium acts than it is for artists playing a 500 cap room. But one of our initiatives now I think it is really important what we're building and trying to fix doesn't just fix it from the top down because that's not the life experience and the entertainment and music experience. It happens on all sides. It's the mid-tier, it's the top down, it's the bottom up. And so, we have different types of engagements for the different sized artists we work with, but we really are trying to work with artists of all size. And that's an example of some of the clients we've had.
What does the music industry sort of look like in maybe 5 years? When Hi-Fi, it's already growing. I know you said you've been around 6 years and you're being humble. You guys have done a tremendous job in that amount of time. Let's say in 5 more years, we extrapolate this. You guys are one of the big players in the space. What has changed in the music industry and what does it look like?
Yeah, I think it's super transparent in the sense of like transparent and easy. And so it's really hard for me to speak to. I don't think like Spotify, I don't think a lot of the players are different on the like digital service provider or, the YouTubes of the world and whatnot where music is discovered. I do think there might be different versions, right? There's got to be a new version of TikTok. TikTok might still be massive, don't get me wrong, but there's got to be like different versions. I do think we could go on a complete tangent and talk hardware tech and wearables. I mean, I think we're about to hit an absolutely like second industrial revolution with hardware. And this is where we can nerd out pretty hard, but I don't know if that means what type of wearables, if it's glasses, if it's, contact lenses, if it's watches. We have kind of versions of all those things now, but what we get excited about because we're alongside these artists is the second those things hit engagement, we just want to make sure we don't really care what it is. I'm intrigued at what it is, but we want to make sure the artists are optimized in that discovery. A really good example of that right now that's very actively happening is like agentic search results. Everyone's been building for SEO, building massive digital marketing plans and rightfully so, targeting pools, retargeting, targeting pixels, everything. But then all of a sudden, you have these bots that are doing search on behalf of people. They're not yet actively buying that much, but agentic commerce is like one of the biggest topics of everything I've seen in like entertainment consumerism. And so how do we make sure the artist labels are happy, artists are happy, everyone's happy, and they're being found. Like, how do we make sure the artist is the source of truth? And so now I think one of the most important things we're doing is paying attention to like, okay, what is the discovery plumbing of the future in the next 5 years? And there's going to be an answer to that on the hardware side that is probably not yet defined. But the current version of it is, I think, things as an assistant, some form of hardware software that's like, Kevin's, Joe's assistant, who are doing things. Some people are going to tune those assistants to say like, hey, do you approve of this ticket purchase, Rufus Du Sol? Others are just going to be like, I want you to buy this ticket if you get to the top of the queue. Queues might not even exist. Like, I think there's so much like infrastructure that's toast, but we feel the most important thing is that the artists have the right to be the source of truth. Like Taylor is, right now in a lot of news, rightfully so, around like kind of like copywriting her likeness. And I think that's going to be a really important thing for all artists. And yeah, I don't know how it's going to play out with the core learning models and AI companies where they have already trained on so much artists. My dream, our wish at Hi-Fi would be that there's a version of that that's okay, but all the artists get credited and there's a revenue stream if they A, opt into letting their music be reused, and B, support that. But yeah, so long story short, I think it's going to be, I should say this, I hope it's going to be a really transparent and direct to kind of fan with the players of the ecosystem as a participant, labels, promoters, whatever. And it's, less unnecessary fees and stuff like that, ideally, and just like an amazing back to the core experience. Another thing that I think is really interesting that I do see, you're seeing this in like the commencement speeches right now, right? Like every commencement speaker for the graduations who are mentioning AI are getting booed off stage. And I do think there's going to be that, we're in that moment of progress. And I think like my take on it is, I'm not anti-AI, but I do think, especially in the arts, AI is F. And what I mean by that is like, I'm most hopeful when I see someone like Cameron Winter play a piano set at Carnegie Hall. You have the tech to do the craziest pyro all in the world, and you have like Anima, who I love too, right? Like doing these unbelievable, and some of our clients like Rufus, I think have one of the best live shows in the world, and it's a combination of music, visuals, art, everything. But there's this desire for human connection that has always been, like you get into like, Hero's Journey and Joseph Campbell. And I think where I feel a lot of people might be getting lost, whether I'm right or wrong on this, I don't know, but like lost in the AI narrative is this thought that like we talked about earlier, like optimization is going to like rule the world. If it does, I think the world is screwed, and it's like, I don't want to be dark, but like there's almost no future if that's the case.
Both of our companies are going to be fighting this. Yeah. I'll be side by side with you.
Totally. I mean, like Hubble's a great example, right? You're like talking to real people. And so yeah, to like tie it up, I think that like, I feel right now, and I feel this could stay, this current moment in time with AI and technology is going to amplify the value of humanity and human connection. You know what I mean? It actually is the thing that might force us to be like, oh, I would rather go hang out with Kevin and talk about life than like have the AI version of Kevin and the AI version of Joe talk about if it's worth those companies doing something together. And then, you know what I mean? Like whether those AI versions of our assistants are right or wrong, the human experience is like getting to know each other, being at a show, next to someone's shoulder. Like I was thinking about this sounds so lame, but like the moments in between, like I'm at a show and I look at a friend or my wife and it's the moment we hug, but it's also the moment she like reaches or like just looks at me, right? That's not an AI thing. And I was asking her, I'm like, hey, in the last year, like what are the most valuable things that have happened to you in the last year? They were dinners. They were concerts that we went to. They were, like obviously our kid being born for the least, but when he was being born, we were playing music and that, you know what I mean? Like, so I think I'm actually super excited about that future. I really am hopeful for it. And I'm hopeful back to like the start and mission of Hi-Fi is that can we continue to just be really good at offering that transparency to artists and their fans and help them, build those universes that create more of an option for the fan to say, I want that experience, and not have it like over market it to them, which is a part of it. But just like let them be aware of music they love, let them find the music they love, let them have the experience. And I'm hopeful more than anything, there will still be a lot of human experiences around that.
That's a beautiful vision and mission, man.
I hope we get it.
I will be supporting you, and I know tons of other people, and definitely the artists will be as well. Final 3 questions really quick.
Yep.
Favorite business book that's made the biggest impact in your life?
Kevin Kelly. It's basically just about like, it is a tech trend thing. You know, he was a former like Wired guy, and he just has some really great points. I won't go long with it because it's a lightning round, but on like how things evolve and, you know, things from hyperlinks to like when URLs first became a thing. And he met, I think, with like Time or CNN. Is like, hey, you should get a website. I'm like, what is a website? And just like the evolution of trends. So he wrote this book a while back. Just read it, and it just felt like, oh, take a step back and think about how things are going to evolve, and then what is the core value that like the artist is creating, the fan is creating. So definitely recommend that one.
If you were talking to a first-time founder, maybe they're fresh out of college, what's the one piece of advice you've picked up on your journey that you would pass on to them?
I mean, fail. So cheesy, but like early on, especially, just whatever those itches. I guess before that, just what is scratching you? Like what are you itching that you're trying to scratch? And what is the little voice in your ear that doesn't go away, even if it only says 3 things? That's the thing you should pursue as soon as you possibly can. And, you know, not everyone has that like privilege and being really thoughtful towards that, but doing whatever you can, never downplaying the potential of people you know and connections everyone has to try to like give yourself that ability to chase those whispers or itches.
The answers you're giving are the same ones I would be giving. I love it. Okay, last question. For anyone listening to this, who's the one person that has made the biggest impact on your life? And what would you want to tell them?
That's such a good question. I'll take a second on that one. I mean, I truly do think I've had so many amazing mentors and I want to speak to them, but I'd be lying to say that it's not like my parents. And just like, you know, I've mentioned my mom a lot, but my dad was like a builder up in this little town up north, and like, you know, built the house we grew up in. And there's something about just their ability to kind of like see something and do something and create that has always been like the through line of inspiration. So yeah. And kind of frankly, I couldn't specifically say every word they touched on this, but just like they created an environment. This is really what I hope to do to my son, is like where I could do what I just described. You know what I mean? Because I don't know if everyone is given that sort of potential inspiration of just like follow your dreams thing. And they gave that to me. And that, you know, I just think if you have that early on, whether you fail, whether you succeed, no matter what, you at least the movement towards your dreams is like the most biggest feeling of living you can get. So yeah, huge credit to my parents.
Shout out mom and dad.
Yeah.
The parents out there. Hey, thanks for sitting down, man. It was awesome talking to you.
Likewise, Kevin. Yeah, this was so much fun. Really appreciate what you're doing at the company and also this podcast, giving us a voice and sharing these journeys. And yeah, excited to continue to listen in.
All right, man. Have a good day.
See you soon. Yep, you too. Bye.
Thanks for listening to Founder Uncovered. If you found this conversation helpful, please follow the show so you don't miss out on next episodes. We also have a newsletter where we profile early stage founders sharing tactical advice you can use right now. You can find the link in the show notes. I'll see you next time.